What if the instruction manual isn't in a library at all?
Right?
What if the absolute best strategic advice, the stuff that actually works, is hidden under a rotting log?
Yeah.
Or inside a termite mound? Or, in the very specific way, a wolf pack moves through deep snow?
It sounds like a romantic, maybe almost poetic idea, but where we're going today, we're going to find out it's actually brutally practical.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a really fascinating and frankly kind of confronting piece of writing. We're covering the awakening, securing the living earth, and we're zooming in specifically on chapter 12. It's titled Rediscovering Nature's Instruction Manual by Mahendra Shah.
And we should probably clarify right off the bat, because I know the title sounds a bit academic. This is not a biology textbook.
Definitely not.
Yeah, it's not a dry scientific paper on biodiversity.
Say, oh, it's a story, it's an allegory.
It is. The setting is something Shah calls the Covenant of Beings. I want you to picture a massive international summit like the G20 or the UN. But instead of politicians in expensive suits arguing over tariffs and borders, you have ants, wolves, whales, trees, and viruses.
No.
And they have all gathered for one single reason: to sit humanity down for an intervention.
It's basically the ultimate performance review for the human race.
Right.
And the feedback is, well, let's just say the annual review isn't going great.
It's scathing, honestly. But our mission today isn't just to recap a story about talking animals. We need to extract two very specific things from this text. First, we're looking for
The essence.
right, the essence or the core distillation of the wisdom these animals are offering. And second, we need to find the Harapan Penulis, the author's hope.
Because without the hope, this is just a depressing list of why humans are terrible, right?
Exactly.
We really need to know, what does Mahendra Shah actually want us to do with this information?
Right. This isn't just about animals. It's a profound critique of our ego, our borders, and the way we literally survive. And interestingly enough, the very first lesson in leadership comes from the smallest creature in the room.
The ants.
The ant.
The chapter opens with the insect stepping up to the mic, basically. And immediately, the text tries to flip our definition of success completely upside down. The ant directly challenges the human obsession with rising above.
Which is so deeply ingrained in us. I mean, we talk about climbing the corporate ladder, we build skyscrapers to dominate the skyline, but the ant points out a very uncomfortable truth. It says your skyscrapers rise, but they crumble within decades.
That is a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
We treat concrete like it's eternal, but nature eats it pretty fast.
Meanwhile, the ant colony, it never collapses. It leaves zero waste. It persists for millions of years. The core concept the ant is pitching here is really about the geometry of strength.
The geometry of strength.
Yeah, humans think strength is vertical. It's about being above someone else. But the ant argues that true strength is horizontal. It is built together.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second here. That sounds really nice on a greeting card, strength is built together. But in a practical sense, how does that actually work? The text describes them moving in these long columns, carrying twigs twice their weight. And the line that really stuck with me was, there was no leader shouting orders, yet there was no confusion. Now, to a modern manager, that just sounds like chaos. If I don't tell my team what to do, nothing gets done.
And that is the classic human assumption. We assume that without a centralized power structure, without a boss, there's just disorder.
Yeah.
But the ant is demonstrating decentralized cooperation.
Decentralized cooperation.
Think about it. In an ant colony, every individual already knows the mission. The information isn't hoarded at the top by an executive. It's shared chemically and instantly across the entire network. The text says, no one sat idle and no one hoarded. They don't need a commander because the system itself provides the direction.
And the humans in this story are just completely baffled by this. The text says one of them scribbles down the word equity and another whispers about efficiency models. It's like they're desperately trying to turn this ancient biological wisdom into a buzzword they can sell at a TED Talk.
Which is such a perfectly human reaction. We try to intellectualize instinct because we've lost touch with it entirely. We want to package it. But if the ants dismantle our corporate structure, the wolves come in to dismantle our entire leadership style.
Yes. This was actually my favorite part of the chapter, mostly because it addresses a massive pet peeve of mine. We always hear about the alpha male in business, right? The guy who dominates the room, eats first, leads from the front.
Which, by the way, is based on completely flawed science from the 1940s that was debunked years ago.
Exactly.
But the myth persists because it really appeals to our ego.
Right. So in the story, the wolves are standing there,
right,
and they don't look like these pristine movie monsters. They look rough. They have scars. They've been through hard winters.
Yeah.
And A she-wolf steps forward. She's thin from nursing, she's older, and she explains leadership to the humans.
She says, we do not claim leadership through domination.
We earn it by how we guard, how we guide.
And here is the insight that I think every single manager listening needs to hear today. She explains that a true leader doesn't sit ahead of the pack. A true leader circles, watches, and returns to walk alongside.
To walk alongside, that is a very different visual than the CEO standing alone on the stage.
It is a massive spatial shift. Think about the logistics of it. If you are out in front, leading the charge, shouting, "Follow me," you physically cannot see who is struggling in the back. You can't see who's limping. You don't know who's falling behind.
You literally have a blind spot the size of your entire organization.
Exactly. The wolf is telling us that care isn't a weakness. It's a form of strategic vision. You have to be part of the circle to maintain the pack.
The text describes the humans, these people who have climbed ladders and left others beneath them, suddenly realizing that their version of leadership was actually just isolation. They were just alone at the top.
And that flows so naturally right into the next section. We move from how we lead to how we build. The text shifts focus to the termites.
Now, I usually think of termites as the pests that are eating my deck.
In our world, definitely. But here, they are introduced as the invisible architects. The text describes their mounds. Relative to their body size, these things are taller than the Burj Khalifa. But it's not just the height, it's the functionality.
Yeah, they mentioned internal climate control.
Right. Passive cooling and warming, rainwater collection, zero waste. These are engineering marvels that run on absolute zero electricity. But the real point isn't just the technology, it's the ego. Or rather, the total lack of it.
That's what stood out to me, too. The text says no one knew their names. Contrast that with human architects. We want our names on the brass plaque in the lobby. We want the stark tower right in the middle of the skyline.
Precisely. The termites work tirelessly, but they remain totally invisible. Their wisdom is in the result, not the recognition. It's all about the durability of the collective work, not the fame of the individual builder.
And the raven, who is watching all of this unfold, jumps in with a very sharp rebuke for the humans.
The raven looks right at the humans and says, "You think wisdom must speak in long sentences? Ours is in function."
Ouch. I mean, that feels like a direct shot at us doing this deep dive right now, honestly.
It really is a direct hit on our human love for speeches, white papers, grand declarations. We love to talk about sustainability. We hold global summits about it. The raven is just asking, does it work? Does it survive? That's the only metric that actually matters. All that rhetoric is useless if the system collapses.
It brings up the spider web here, too, right? The text describes a web strung between forgotten trees. If one corner is touched, the whole web knows.
That is the absolute definition of systems thinking.
Yeah.
No single thread dominates the web, but every single thread is essential. If you pull one string, the whole thing vibrates. The spider doesn't need to hold a committee meeting to know something happened. The structure itself communicates.
And that metaphor, the web where everything is connected, leads us directly into what I think is the most politically charged part of the text. Because if everything is connected, then our lines on a map don't make a whole lot of sense.
The animals start tearing apart the whole concept of nation states. And what's wild is they don't even do it with anger. They do it with confusion.
Yeah, it's almost pity. They just seem baffled by our maps. The fox asks a question that is just so poetic. He asks, how many times must a river be renamed before it forgets how to flow?
It's a beautiful line because physically, the river is the exact same water. But humans chop it up. We say, this part is France, this part is Germany, or this is the US, this is Mexico. The river doesn't care. It just flows.
And the bear chimes in. It mentions roaming from the Balkans to the Himalayas. The bear doesn't know it's crossing enemy lines or entering a new legal jurisdiction. It just knows the land. It just knows where the food is.
And then the sea turtle. This one was honestly heartbreaking for me. She points out that in the international waters, which is a concept that only exists in human law, the plastic floating there bears slogans from every corner of the globe.
That is such a dark image. Our trash is united, even if we aren't.
Exactly. We share the consequences of our consumption completely, but we totally refuse to share the responsibility.
So the humans try to defend themselves, naturally. The text describes a woman in a coat with stitched symbols of national pride and a man whose hands smell like contracts. They argue that borders are for safety. They say we need them for defense.
And the animals just systematically dismantle that defense. The owl points out that we call it defense while children become statistics. But the crushing line, the one that really defines this whole section, comes from the crow.
Unity cannot be a weekend costume.
That is the line. It cannot appear only during earthquakes and vanish when your markets recover.
Man, Mahendra Shah is really holding a harsh mirror up to us here, because that is exactly what we do.
It is. Just think about it. When a massive disaster strikes a tsunami, a terrible earthquake, we suddenly talk about global humanity. We send international aid. We come together, but the very moment the stock market stabilizes, the moment the crisis fades from the news, we go right back to our corners. We put the costume away.
And the tiger weighs in on prejudice right after that. He says, "Who teaches children to fear people who do not look like them? Not the rivers, not the stars."
It's learned behavior. The text is telling us that division is entirely a human invention. Nature is indifferent to our flags. A forest fire doesn't stop at a border crossing. A flood doesn't ask to see your passport.
Which brings us to the darker turn in the chapter, because up until now, the animals have just been critiquing us. But now, they start warning us.
Yes. The tone really shifts from political philosophy to an existential threat. The text talks about environmental collapse, but it describes it as a language.
It says nature stops whispering and starts shouting.
Forests spelt out on fire, asking how much must be sacrificed. Glaciers, which are called old storytellers, weeping into puddles. It's just devastating imagery of loss.
The image of the polar bear really got me. It's described as a cautionary tale, thin, moving toward nowhere. But then the text brings in something very specific. It calls it the breathless messenger.
This is clearly a reference to the pandemic, the virus.
It describes it as something that swept through doors, left ajar by negligence.
And notice the framing here. In the human world, when the pandemic hit, we framed it as a war. We were fighting the virus. It was the enemy. But here, in the covenant of beings, the virus is a messenger.
That is a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
A deadly messenger.
It is. But look at the effect it had. It silenced traffic. It interrupted markets. But what I found so fascinating is what happened during that silence. The humans looked out their windows and saw animals walking on the roads. They heard birds with unfamiliar accents.
Right. Nature moved back in.
It forced a pause. And here is the critical insight regarding the hairpin penniless, the author's hope. The text insists that this wasn't a punishment.
Right. It explicitly says it was tough love.
Exactly. A plea wrapped in harsh consequences. The message wasn't, "I hate you." The message was, "Listen while you still can." The wind even says that our prayers have started to carry warnings instead of wonder.
That is profound. I mean, we pray for rain, but now we're afraid of the storm. We pray for sun, but we're terrified of the drought. The whole relationship has just turned into fear.
Because we stopped reading the manual, we tried to override the system instead of working within it.
So we've got the critique, we've got the warning, now we finally get to the turn. This is the awakening part of the title. How does the chapter resolve? Because if it just ends there, it's just a tragedy.
But it doesn't end in doom, and that's so important. The authors hope the hairpin penniless isn't for an apocalypse. It's for a new beginning. The text says humans started to write less with noise and more with effort.
We see reefs being replanted, whales finally returning to bays, and the animals stop looking at humans as strangers or enemies.
They see them as a new cohort of pupils, students who failed the first grade but are finally genuinely ready to learn. There's this beautiful image of humans picking up fallen leaves and tracing the veins for guidance. It's a return to real humility.
And the text clarifies what nature actually wants from us. Because I think sometimes we feel like the only way to fix this is to reject civilization entirely and go live in a cave. But the text doesn't say that at all.
No, it explicitly says it doesn't want us to bow down and worship it. No altars, no annual pledges. Nature does not care about our reverence. It wants three things: presence, curiosity, and restraint. It wants us to view the earth as a living text, not a resource catalog.
Not a resource catalog. That is the mental shift right there. We aren't shopping, we're living here.
And that leads to the final image of the chapter. And for me, this is hands down the most powerful moment in the book. It sets the true metric for success. And it's not a stock price, it's not a carbon credit, it's not a peace treaty.
It's the deer.
It's the deer. Paint the picture for us.
So a deer walks across a stretch of new grass in a field that no one owned. A human is standing right there. And the text says it did not flinch.
It did not flinch.
That gave me chills reading it. It seems like such a small thing, but it's huge.
Think about the implication of that split second. For a deer, a prey animal, to walk near a human and not flinch, there has to be a complete restoration of trust. The fear, which has been the defining dynamic between man and nature for centuries, is just gone.
That's the hairpin penniless. That's the hope.
That is the ultimate goal, a world where our presence doesn't immediately signal a threat. where we are just another part of the web, not the thing trying to tear it all down.
So let's bring this home. What does this all mean for you? For the listener driving to work right now, or managing a team, or just trying to figure out the news? Because we aren't at a summit with talking wolves.
It means we don't need to invent a brand new way to survive. We don't need some futuristic AI or terraforming technology to save us. We just need to read the manual that has been running the planet for millions of years.
The ants, the wolves, the termites, they've already figured out sustainability. They've figured out leadership.
We just need to stop thinking we're above the system and realize we are a part of it. As the starlings row in the sky in the text, together or nowhere.
Together or nowhere. That is a powerful place to land.
It really is.
I want to leave you with a final thought today, inspired by this text. If nature really is a library of survival strategies, just vast encyclopedias of how to live well, are we actually reading the books? Or are we just burning them to keep ourselves warm for one more night?
That is the question.